All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Cutlass Podcast, audio and visual versions of this. Hey, to those subscribers out there, thank you. And the loyal listeners, thank you. We've had over the last couple of weeks some tremendous support there, a lot of downloads. I'm almost doubled my YouTube subscribers, so that's good. I'm almost at my first threshold. I'm not where our guests are yet, but I'm working my way there. So I'm at 199, looking to get to 200. And I do want to get to a point to where I figure out, and maybe Damo can help me figure out where I can give away some CPO guides and kind of incentivize and do some cool things like that. But if you're a new listener, welcome. I hope you find what we're talking about helpful as you develop your leadership and management skills. And that's the goal of it, to make you a more sturdy, versatile, incredible leader. A lot of what we talk about is based in science and social science and psychology and economics. But then we bring in guests that can put it together with practical, been there, done there, that kind of experience. So I think today you're going to find a really, really insightful episode. I'm excited. One topic that I've had on my mind a lot, in fact, when I was on active duty and I was a part of what's called the Fleet CPO training team, and that team would go around to the fleet and we would do these one day, we called it re-energization seminars. So we'd huddle the chiefs mess together, bring them off site, and then we just facilitate a series of topics over about 5 or 6 hours. And one of the topics we would talk about is the importance of being able to understand generational differences and how that can impact your leadership, and then how those generational attitudes and differences can impact your organization. So today we're going to dive into that. And I'm excited for our guests. I recently joined them, and it was a pleasure to join them. And I'm grateful that they invited me on their Permission to Speak Freely podcast. So I got Damo McCullough with me here, and then Tisha Bing, right? Tisha. Yes. And we're going to jump in this conversation. So first of all, I want you guys to introduce yourselves a little bit. Both of them are, have served in the Navy or are serving in the Navy. And they've got great perspectives, and I'm excited to have them. So Damo, what's going on?
Not much, man. I just found out that I was selected for command senior chief, right? So That's the latest news, right? Bigger, important late news is that I'm a brand new dad, right? Brand new girl dad. That's new big news. But back then, coming up, I'm an electrician, right? So I started out EMCS. Started out in Virginia. I've actually hit 17 years this month, so little bit of experience compared to some of the other people you had on the podcast. You got some 30, 35-year people on there, but I'm at 17, close to 20. I'm active right now, and I'm on a carrier, and I'm loving it in Norfolk. I know I got to leave soon because of the command, but I'm loving what I'm doing on the carrier.
Awesome. Yeah, 17, you're getting up there now. I mean, that's okay. Mm-hmm. I think you're about crusty now, right? That's what we used to call it. Not quite, but you look too pretty to be crusty, though.
Thank you.
I mean, well, that might be some of that generational stuff. We'll talk about that. So, all right, Tisha, how about you? Tell us about yourself.
Speaking of pretty, that would be me instead of Damo.
Hating from the beginning.
So I am a happily retired LNC. I retired at 20 back September of last year. So I'm really freshly retired. Really, I'm still transitioning to the other side. Half the time I still feel like I am active duty. So came in as a CTA, converted over to LN. Of course, LNs, it's hard for us to get on sea duty. CTAs, hard to get on sea duty. So I spent a majority of my career on shore. However, have been surrounded by amazing, amazing leaders. I have been on ship. I do have my surface and airman. So give me my street cred.
Absolutely.
But been surrounded by amazing leaders, and I'm just very happy to be here, and thank you for inviting us on.
No, absolutely. So for those, in LN, right? So civilians that might be listening, right? That's a legal man, right?
Yes.
So she did, she got to see a lot of interesting things, right? She got a lot of bad boy and bad girl behavior.
Right.
So maybe we need to spin off an episode on that one day. Top 5 lessons learned as a legal man in the Navy.
Right. Exactly. And for those who don't know, it's the equivalent of a paralegal.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. So congratulations on your retirement and your
Thank you.
transition.
Thank you.
And now having been, it goes quick, retired 5 years,
Mm,
um, it does take some time, right? It's going to take some time to kind of get used to a new norm, and
right.
you're going to acclimate, but you're definitely going to miss some things. But I think in the job you're going to do, you'll stay connected. But the opportunities out there are really good. So I'm excited for you. I really
Thank
am.
you.
So,
Thank you.
Damo, you just started. You're like,
Yeah.
He's a lifer.
you got your lifer patch now. You just command senior chief. Like, we need to get you a command master chief starter kit.
Yeah,
Get you
yeah,
going on
for
some of that
sure,
stuff.
100%.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. All right, you guys ready to jump in this topic?
Yeah,
Let's.
let's do it.
All right, so we touched on it a little bit when I joined on your podcast, but like you said on it, like you reserved some stuff. So as we would talk in an organization, they say, there's 5 generations that could be present. I say 4, right? Because I think the traditional generation, as they would be titled, I think most of them are retired now and really not working. Or if they're working, they're doing some kind of consulting work. If you look at kind of when they came in or when they were born, you're looking at these people are usually retired. So for our purposes, we're going to talk about these 4 generations that are not just in the Navy, but in any organization at any given time. The interesting thing is they're all shaped differently. They're shaped by different experiences. They're shaped by technology. They're shaped by the cultural values and beliefs before they even come into the organization. And then as they experience things, as they grow up, right, it can shape their experiences too. They're categorized with some vague characteristics. I'm going to go through those a little bit first. It doesn't mean everyone's like that, right? So I'm a Gen X, but I was born late in the generation, so I could be blended a little bit with some others, but you've got 4 generations that I want us to focus on and kind of just take a pulse on. So number 1, you get your baby boomers, born 1946 to 1964, and some things that they like and value: collaborative, and more so than the traditionalists who were focused on, respect and authority and position. But the boomer tends to value hard work, loyalty, achievement, and emphasizes the importance of relationships in business. And frankly, for Navy terms, at this point, most of your boomers are either retired or they're very, very senior flags, or if there's any command master chiefs left. And I don't know if Jim Honey is a boomer. I think he'd be a Gen X with me. But you might have an occasional 1 or 2 in the highest levels of the DoD of senior enlisted leaders that are still boomers. But for the most part, they've rolled on. Gen X, 1965 to 1980. This is me. So you're talking most flag officers, most of your senior command master chiefs, and most of your senior officers, senior captains and stuff like that. So typically more independent and self-reliant, and we'll talk a little bit about why that could be. We started to value work-life balance a little more, right? It wasn't just like go to the office and work all the time and loyalty to country, or not just country, but loyalty to a company. We started like, no, family's just as important, doing things outside. And then we became comfortable with technology, right? So I would talk a story about, I was the kid who was, Atari came into my living room, right? Most, MTV came into my living room. I had HBO with a box and a cable that came out of the TV. So, the cell phones were like this big back then, but it was cool stuff, right? So we're like, all right, I like video games, I like that kind of stuff. So we appreciate it. We're just not as adept, as the younger generations with technology, but we value it. And then I think we definitely want to be engaged with work. And I would offer, at least from my perspective, it was less about the position and the title in the office, and it was more about how can I get things done, right? And then I wanted to be approachable and I wanted to be more collaborative with my teams. So less about do it because I said so, and more about, hey, how do we solve this thing together? Or because of the way we grew up, I think there's more of a sense of how can we take a new approach, you know what I mean? Or that rule doesn't make sense. We can go over here and do it a little differently. So that's your Gen X folks, and that's me. And I think you guys are going to be the next generation, right? Millennials,
Yes.
we're talking 1981 to 1996 born, right? I'm talking.
Yes.
Yep.
So this is the Navy Chiefs mess, and this is most middle management in most organizations. This is also most commanding officers and most senior department heads. That's this generation. So you are literally leading Navy day to day, right? So where Gen X is up in the policy level and kind of making big decisions and organizational thinking. You guys are getting the work done day to day. You're doing most of the leading. And the attributes there tend to be more collaborative and team oriented than previous generations, place a high value in diversity and inclusion. And I can say, based on the changes I've seen, not just within the military, but within society, that's not just, a stereotype. I think that's actually happening, and that is an actual value. It says they like to seek opinions before making decisions, and definitely more tech savvy than me, and definitely more tech savvy than the boomers. So that's you guys. And then anyone after 1996, these are the sailors you're leading, young department heads, young division officers. This is Gen Z, just beginning to enter the workforce or just starting to establish their career. Comfortable, definitely with technology, definitely out there, but they consume information differently, for sure, just like you guys did. Social media is a big deal. And then this concept of authenticity and transparency. So they want authentic leadership. They want transparent leadership. And there's some conflict there, when you look at older generations and how they thought about information, right, and reputation and protecting things. And then again, the Gen Z is big about inspiring and prioritizing people's emotions and well-being. So I think that ties into it. So again, I think that represents a lot of the general characteristics, but people can have attributes of both. And then each of us has our own different, kind of attributes as well. So you could be a millennial with a very boomer attitude, right? So it doesn't mean just because you're a millennial, you're stuck in that queue. So these generations are shaped by these social and technological influences and experiences. So here's where you see it. Work styles are going to differ in the workplace. Values are different, right? And that comes in what people value. How we communicate differs, right? How we receive, how we like to give communication, and then our expectations of others and their roles is different, right? So that's good and that's bad. So that can introduce tension, that can introduce stereotypes. You see blame being thrown around. There's friction, but it can be worked through, right? So if an organization learns to take advantage of these attributes, and if they take time to understand it, I think there's a value add, and you can really bring a team together and use the attributes of all the generations to the success of the organization. Unfortunately, you see the friction, right? You see the boomers lashing out the millennials like, oh, you're entitled and you're lazy and this and that. And then they lash back like, okay, whatever, boomer, so that's definitely not productive. So I want to talk a little bit with you guys today. You've been in the mess, you're in middle management, you get a 360-degree view on what's going on. And I think your perspective is perfect, especially, Damo, with the role you're going into. Tisha, your experience, like having seen legal stuff, right? You've seen a lot there. So I think this is going to be cool. So I'm going to start to throw it over to you guys now. So why do you guys think, and I'm going to start with Tisha here, why should anyone care about these generational attitudes, values, and beliefs and these generational differences?
So we always say in the Chiefs Mess, like, what's one of the things we say, like, how to lead? Know your people. So you have to know what makes them tick. You have to know how to speak their language. And so I feel like it's important because if your intent, you want to make sure that it is received. Your message is received on the other side. That's effective communication, if you will. And so knowing how this sailor may perceive this information and how they like to receive the information, it's the basis of what am I trying to say? Like it's going to affect how your sailors view you. It's going to affect how when they're calling bullshit.
Yeah.
Because they're good at calling bullshit. They are smarter than we think that they are. And so we can't just look at the fact that, oh, they're younger, they're not as experienced in the Navy, and automatically assume that they don't know or they may not have a good idea. It's not the point and shoot type of Navy that we used to have. And so you have to be able to navigate and adapt to what is now, because like you said, the boomers are phasing out. The what was that? So millennials eventually will start to, well, I've already phased out. But
No, you
eventually,
haven't phased out.
Damo, he'll start to, as he comes up in the rank, and over time he will phase out, and so it's like the majority of our Navy is going to be that younger generation that's coming up. That's the new future. And so we have to ensure that we are still instilling the leadership that we learned, but instilling it to where we are empowering our sailors to be better, not to be just like us, but to be better than where we were.
Yeah. And Damo, this is going to be important for you, right? So you're going to be in a position where you're going to literally, you will be in the conversation, managing these conversations across generations in many cases. So why do you think this is important?
Yeah. So personally, my personal thought is, you ever read the 48 Laws of Power?
Yep.
All right. So I think it's the second law: never outshine the master.
Yeah.
So I take that in all the time whenever I like deal with anybody. So in any situation I'm in, I'm never the master in any situation. Like I always let. So I'm complimentary in every situation, even if in my head I don't think I am. Right. But it helps, like for me, it helps when you deal with the approach. Right. So example, I know when I'm dealing with boomers that they value the work, like they value the process. Right. A lot of times my wife's father will come visit. Hey, like, let's fix the cars, let's clean this, let's do this, let's do that. And that, like, the payoff for him is getting it, like, the work actually done in the process of it. The payoff for me is getting the work done, like, it's over. Like, no more. So, like, when you giving those pep talks, you like, hey, let's get this done and completed so we could chill. You know what I mean? And that's how I'm talking to my millennials. When I'm like, the football speech, right? The old halftime speech when the coach come in, and then they do it in the Navy before, like, in serve, right? Like, you want buy-in from people. So, hey, let's get together. Let's show these inspectors. Like, that don't really work as much with Gen Z as it worked with the millennials, and even probably worked more with the boomers, because don't nobody really care about that much anymore. So the real conversation is like, hey, after we get this done, y'all can get up out of here early. And then you see Gen Z kind of latch on. So I just think it helps, and even if you can't always have that conversation, it at least helps you with the approach and knowing who you're talking to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And that's a fundamental communication, right? Number one, know your audience, right? And you have different audiences. And as you'll see, you're going to bring your commanding officer out there, and he's going to want your advice, or she's going to want your advice on how do we engage the crew, right? So that understanding, I think that's valuable, right? It's like, okay, what are you thinking of saying? Well, I'm thinking of saying this. It's like, well, that's not going to.
That's not it.
Well, let's take that to the wardroom and the cheese mess. But let's not take that on the flight deck and say that to the sailors. So, but yeah, I think definitely it's going to help enhance communication for the organization. I think when people start to understand each other and value, instead of seeing these differences as threats or as negative traits, it'll enhance inclusivity. Right. And I got it. That word's thrown around a lot, but you want that in a team, right? That's a fundamental of building a strong team, right? I want to be included in my team. I want to feel a part of that. So if you're a leader and you can embrace that and generate that, I think that's powerful. And then you want, I think, as it said, you want collaboration, right? I think the younger generations definitely want to participate and give and contribute. I think the technology actually lends itself to them being more informed, with more solutions. Maybe not the same experience I had with hands-on, kind of Gen X outside stuff, but you've got access to technology that can tell you anything, right? So, and at the end of the day, with all that, you get more productivity, right? Yeah. So it's not just productivity, it's efficiency too, right? So when I got people working together and understanding, or if I've got people with certain skill sets or attributes that, hey, the third class petty officer might be the person to deliver this message, or the best thing to do this. Or traditionally, we would have looked at something different. So absolutely. All right. So you got this 360-degree view, or I think you do, right? You've been able to assess, over your careers, you see messages from flag officers, you see what the MCPON's pushing out. You hear a bit from Fleet and Force Master Chiefs. You definitely hear commanding officers pushing message. You hear what sailors are pushing up, and then you hear what the chiefs mess in the middle, right? the translators are like buying or not buying. So let's get into that a little bit. So I want to start with like the more senior people, right? So where their challenges or could be, or where do you think they're struggling, or how well do they do with these kind of following areas? So, so Damo, so technological adaptation. So how well do you think your average kind of senior officer or command master chief is doing with technology in today's Navy?
Hey, Paul, I don't know if the Navy as a whole, is getting it right now as far as technology, as far as like finding ways for the sailors to see whatever it is we talking about, whatever it is we teaching, right? So, and I'm talking about the Navy, whatever that is, yeah. Right. So now when you translate it down to a CO, CMC, and stuff like that, I don't know. I think like we got an expectation of things, and it's probably not true, right? Like you might think like that sailor is like doing that like NKO, but they really just on Quizlet. You know what I'm saying?
NKO in itself, right? Like old clunky, what's his name? I've seen the memes on like Bob, like
yeah,
who's
right.
that character on the NKO court,
Yeah, that guy, right? But so you might think they doing that, but they really on Quizlet. I believe that it's people that still think like the sellers are reading the POWs. It's not a lot of like, based off of my experience, it's not a lot of sellers reading PODs, POWs nowadays. It's not a lot of sellers opening their Outlook to read through emails nowadays. I've given training on how to write emails, how to answer phones and stuff like that. So I think we expect, and I was talking to one of my chiefs and I'm like, hey, like they don't know this stuff coming out of boot camp. So the only people that could teach them is us. Right. So I think we got this and I don't know if I'm answering the question or not, but I think we have an expectation that sellers have all of this information that we had and know how to do all of this stuff. But if we don't ever teach it and we don't ever enforce it, it's never going to, get done. So I think I think we might be, and when I say we, I'm not necessarily talking about me.
Yeah.
but I think like we might be in la la land when when we kind of looking at what we do translating. Now, one thing that I will say is on my ship, they do try different things. Like they put these big screens up that show the POD and the POW so sellers could see it. And sellers kind of take more toward that type of stuff than the paper POD.
Yeah.
I remember it was a time was like, hey, make sure you got my last division on my last ship. Make sure you got a POD in your back pocket. Pull it out at quarters. Read it. Do this, do that, do that. Now people don't want to kill trees. So
right.
So it's a lot, but I think a lot of it got to do with us kind of going to where they are and seeing how they're receiving information. Example, Force, they put out information about a policy. I believe that our podcast clip that we made probably went out to way more sellers than any quarters, any paper, or anything would have done for these sellers to actually see this information that Force put out.
Yeah.
It was like new news to them.
Yep. Tisha, what do you, and I think it's into comfort with these communication tools, right? So, I know I valued them. It was too late when I started messing around with Facebook Live and Friday with Fleet kind of thing, right? But I recognized quickly, like, holy crap, I can get a lot of reach here.
Right.
Where do you see that stuff? Or why do you think? I don't think senior Navy leaders use it enough, right? Like jumping on Facebook, the captain, he might do it, but he's the exception, not the norm.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
It's just not familiar. And a lot there's a lot of negative connotation when it comes to social media anyways, especially, when you're not a Gen Z or a millennial. They just don't understand it. They don't get it. It's something new. And at that age and that part of the game, they're not really interested in learning something different either when it comes to like social media. I would have to differ just a little bit with Damo when it comes to Big Navy. I'll give them a little bit of grace because I do understand that it's not something that is familiar with them. Like our generation, we're on our phone like all the time. Like, you go to a restaurant and you'll see a table full of people and everybody's on their phone scrolling with the same thumb flip because they're flipping through everything and not actually engaging with everyone. So our generation is we're more attached to our phone and social media. Whereas the COs, they're engaging with, they're taking in the moment. But Big Navy, as far as Big Navy, I feel like they are trying. How they're utilizing it, like I feel like they could just kind of shotgun this information out there. They'll just put out the nav admin and then just kind of back away.
Yeah.
Force, he did come on and he put his little spin on it, and then I should say we, because we're collectively permission to speak freely, but I kind of like jumped down his throat for what he posted on there. So if I were, when I thought about it, I was like, dang, if I was that senior leader, I'm trying to engage with my with the fleet and those, echelons and echelons below me, and then I get blasted in the face and everybody hates me now. I'm the most famous man in the Navy all of a sudden. So that would make them more reluctant to actually go back and use it again to try to get their information out. But as far as like why they're not using it, I just think it's not familiar. And then it's the control of information also. Being cautious about what information you put out there. The good thing about social media is that it does help the news to travel faster than, just updating it on the Navy website. But at the same time, bad news travels even faster. So it takes more time and effort to try to get in front of it, especially for like captains, chief, like the middle management. Navy's kind of shotgunning this information out there before we even have a chance to digest it. First thing in the morning on a Monday after the nav admin is being released, we come in and we're getting shotgunned in the face, and we walk into a whole bunch of disgruntled sailors before we have a chance to kind of soften the blow a bit. So I think that they could utilize it better. However, I think that is just going to come over time, and I appreciate them actually using it. I think, who was it? McPun, he did like a Reddit. I think they tore him up there too.
But so I think that's a piece of it too. So I think there's, as you move up, there's some risk aversion. But there's also I think there's a well-intentioned desire to protect the corporate brand a bit, and I don't want to speak out of turn kind of thing. And to your point, you come on a forum like this, I'm comfortable with it, but I don't have anything, hanging over my head. Even when I was doing Friday with Fleet, I was still mindful, okay, I can't take this into opinion-based policy bashing, kind of stuff. So, but I think I think you're right. I think it's going to be, as Gen X, some are using it, but you guys, your generation, I think it's going to start to come more and more, just with forums like this and other things. I think the comfort with it will naturally transcend up. So,
hey, Paul, can I jump on one thing real quick about, so just to be clear to the listeners, when I'm talking about Big Navy, I'm not talking about social media, talking about nav admins and stuff like that. I'm talking about our tech manuals and the way that we like technical information, those things need to be upgraded. That's because I think your question started out about, for me, it started out about technical stuff. So that's what I'm answering is all of that stuff is out of date. Is not translating to the sellers. I don't see too many. Remember the white tech mans that sellers used to read, and the nav none of that stuff is really translating to sellers anymore. I mean, of course they got to do PQSs, but I don't see too many sellers opening up tech manuals and reading them.
And there are even when I was at Fleet Forces, this, they have the technology. Oh, we got 3D kind of training thing, right? So the stuff was out there, but it was all it just takes, like I mentioned on my podcast, so long to integrate this stuff, right? And then, again, you get into the bureaucracy and the gatekeepers, and now it's well, we got to make sure there's no infosec, and all this. Really? I mean, because Google, they're worried about infosec too, right? And they're figuring this out. And Navy Federal is definitely worried about infosec, but I can do everything I need to do on my phone, right? So I don't know if it's the lead. I think the leaders want to do it. It's just the people in the organization and the barriers to
It's
you
crazy
know?
because by the time we get the stuff, it's old. It's like
Yeah.
15,
Right.
20 years old. The
Yeah.
technology.
And now it's time to try, like, now we got to
Now it's
update
time-
it again, kind of thing. Right.
Right.
So, what about stuff like, where do you see workplace expectations changing? Right. So, um, I'm a big fan. I don't know if it's my personal attitude or if I was shaped growing up as a Gen X doing this, but this whole, I don't just want to come to work and sit around for 8 hours. If you got me here and I can get something done in 4 hours, then let me go and do something else. Composed to, no, we just come to the office for 8 hours and we do our 8 hours and we just hang out. Like, what do you see with that? Is that changing, or what are the attitudes regarding kind of work expectations?
Tish, you want to go
I
first?
feel like it is kind of changing because the ones who are releasing those sailors, our values are changing.
Yeah.
And, we value, work-life balance. And just trying to kind of, hey, let's get this done and not sit around. I feel like in my experience, a lot of times when sailors are having to just sit around, it was because the old heads are just like, I want everybody, I want everybody here, right? Just in case something happens, just in case I need something printed off, like go ahead and sit there. But I've had to push back on senior leaders who wanted everyone collectively to sit in the office and kind of wait for something to happen. And usually that's when I'll kind of go over the priorities, with that supervisor, and just kind of, I'm using the word supervisor. Wow, it's really civilian now.
See, you're already adapting.
It's happening. But I would just go over the priorities, make sure they're comfortable with where we are for the day, and then say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and release the people, and then just kind of wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
But I think that the work-life balance is a little bit different, but I think we kind of control that. So I think it's getting better. It's getting better.
What are you seeing and hearing?
I'm seeing it a little, I'm seeing a different side from what Tisha's seeing. I think Tish talking about more like end of the day, right? When it's time to leave.
Mm-hmm.
During the day, throughout the day, I'm seeing it to where like a lot of sellers need direction, right? And if they don't get it, shout out to the young sellers. What's up, y'all?
Yeah.
I'm seeing where a lot of young sellers need direction. And if they don't get it from the work center soup, then they are just kind of sitting somewhere waiting to be told what to do, right? I say that, compared to me being a young EM. And I always talk to my division about this all the time. I'm like, hey, when I was a young EM, I would look at the work list. I would kind of take bullets from the work list and I would leave. First, it's a couple of things that got to do with me. I'm a little bit antisocial, and I don't like. I got a leadership issue, right? I know those things about me, so I try to work in those things, right? So since I don't want to be told what to do, and I don't want to see anybody, I go to the office. I write all my work down, and then I go do the work. The next time you see me is at lunch. I'm putting down my bag, and I'm gonna ask everybody I work for, did anything come up that I need to know about? Nope. I go eat lunch. I go back to the shop. I get my work back. And I get things done. If I finish at a really decent hour, I talk to my work center soup. Is there anything left? Anything else I got to do? No, if not, boom. And then like me and my division, though, we had a family type camaraderie. Like I love those guys. But when I was at work, I wanted to work so I could get it done and get out of there. I'm seeing a lot more like team building, morale building, stuff like that, where it's like you need a work center soup, a hound to be in the office. Like, hey, I need you to do this here. I need a point person every time. Like I got you over here, you doing this. And then when your sellers come back, your point person is there telling them to go back out again. All right, I need you to go do this, go do that. If not, me personally, what I've seen, if not, it becomes that like a group of people kind of just sitting around laughing, having a good time, and doing some morale building.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen.
Well, I think that's always happened in the Navy at some point.
Yeah.
So I could point my finger and go, or not point my finger, but like, so then my brain starts going, well, why would that be? So is that back to generational differences? Like, so I'm a kid raised as Gen X, and I'm like told, go outside and go handle your stuff, right? And I'm just out there figuring it out, right? I'm doing what I need to do. I'm working at a young age, right? And got to, just like wanting to do it for whatever reason. And then other generations, and this isn't their fault or anyone's fault, but you see the rise of the helo parent and the bulldozer parent, right? So it's, soccer mom coming in and directing and orchestrating every move that the kid does, right? And pressure to succeed. And then they're like, well, I don't want to try something because, mom's going to be on my butt. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's a symptom of that, but that's interesting to hear.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, since I didn't like authority, like I gave authority, like I kind of gave it no reason for me to have authority. Like, hey, this guy is self-sufficient, autonomous, he get things done. Boom. Now, could I adjust and acquiesce? Yes, I could, right? I never was a hassle to authority. I didn't make it this far being a hassle to authority. Nowadays, though, you got some people that don't want to be told what to do, but they still not doing anything.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, where I am with that.
Yeah. Damo, like, not to get super, when were you born?
86.
Okay. So you're like, I think you're like me. I was born 69. So I think I'm like, I think you have some attributes, like the things you're saying resonate with me. Like, yeah, that's kind of how my attitude was. Like, hey, let's come in and get things done. Like, I didn't, I respected authority, but I didn't need authority to be telling me what to do. Just kind of give me like, what do you need me to do? And like, I got it, from there.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
all right. So let's talk about, I think military culture factors in this as well. So, as you know, we bring in people from all over the world, right? Not the world, but the country for sure. Diverse backgrounds, cultural, ethnic, geographic, the whole thing, religion. It's just, throw them all into boot camp together, right? So when you do stuff like that, you got to have a core set of values and beliefs and kind of culture to try to align people to. And I think that's good about the military. But the other way, I'm like, okay, I think you still need to give room for these generational kind of attitudes to breathe. You know what I mean? So like, you got to embrace the communication, things like that. So what do you guys think? Like, what would be your assessment of that balance, right? Do you think the balance is there? Is it favor, or are we starting to default too much to what the generation wants at the expense of organizational values and culture? Or is organizational values and culture too strong to where it's inhibiting? Does that make sense? What do you guys think? Tisha, I'll throw that one to you.
Oh, I knew you were going to throw it to me first.
Or Damo, if Damo wants that one.
Damo, you want that one first?
Yeah. Because I think it's a nasty balance of like just inequity right now. So I believe that like we do conform at times to generational things, but I think the things that we conform to is not even what that generation like wants, right? It's like me and Tisha had a joke before on one of our episodes about the women, right? And the fact that they get these t-shirts. It was a joke for me, but I'm like, it's a lot of other, like, do we know what the women want, or are we like, hey, let's give them these t-shirts, have we, so it's like, yeah, no, young people, they want to do this. Like, well, is it a young person in that room saying that, that's what they want to do? So so I do think we lean toward that, but it's times that I think we probably should, like, how are they studying? How are they learning? How do we get there? All right, so they don't want to take exams, right? We kind of know that, right? So we're going to move toward taking exams out of here. All right, but how are they going to get their technical knowledge up in order to be leaders if we taking away advancement exams, or we keep finding reasons for sellers to not have to take advancement exam? I get it. The advancement exam kind of sucks. We get it. But then it's other things like male hair, right? Like male hair that, like, guys want to do things with their hair that, the other generations never really value, but these people do. This is like, if you walk around, young people hair, like civilians, they got all types of hairstyles, right? So this is something that they value, but like, we're not going to meet them here, but we're going to meet them at this place that they don't, they don't even want us to meet them at. So I think we get this weird, nasty balance when it comes to that. And I might have more after Tisha.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say I wholeheartedly agree. And I don't even understand half the time, like, it almost feels like they're trying to throw out cookies, and they're like, well, we don't want to tend to this bigger. Let's just throw something out there to kind of
Right.
like hone them down a little bit, but yeah, I don't really feel like there's like the pieces are really connecting.
Yeah.
And I can't even speak as to why it's not connecting, because like Damo said, it's so weird. And while you were asking the question, I'm like, I don't even know how to answer this question because it's just such a
it's complicated, right?
It is. There we go. It's complicated. It's like a relationship. It is complicated. It's very complicated.
It's my nuke mind now. Like vanilla as a nuke. We talked about that, right? Overthinking stuff.
It's complicated.
Yeah,
but
I think I see, like, to Damo's point, and this just isn't the Navy. This is organizations at large, right? Okay, people see that, right? So there's definitely things in the military you need, right? Like, so good order and discipline. We value that for a reason, right?
Right.
Like structure, timeliness, right? These aren't things that are just made up for no reason. They're valued for a reason. If you start to throw some of those over the side, but to your point, then there's things I even saw as a Gen X. I'm like, why? Like the hands in the pockets policy change. Like, finally, okay, that changed. Like, really, we're gonna hold on to that? Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it just some of those traditional kind of beliefs kind of just introduced angst for no reason, right? So, I think you got to have it both ways. I think there's some struggle going on.
Yeah.
It's hard, Paul. So, I'm going to give you an example about GoAd, for instance. Like, I had a Gen Z, one of my sellers, Gen Z guy, right? Love him to death, man. But we had he was late a lot. He used to come to work late a lot. And I'm a millennial, right? I honestly, in this office, I'm on shore duty. I could care less about, you being late, really, right? I know the Navy, we got our own thing with lateness and stuff like that, but you got a big window with me as far as, coming late. But on Mondays for our departmental quarters, like, I need you on time. That's like outside of whatever other time I, need you to be on time. And I remember just having a conversation with the seller after about like 3 latenesses, and I'm like, writing them up and stuff. And I'm like, what would you do, man? Just like Gen Z guy. I'm like, what would you do if you had somebody late? He's like, well, I asked him, why was he late? I'm like, all right, you did that. That was done. I'm like, all right, they late again. Right. What would you do? So then we and I saw that we were going down this like 75 time being late, like rabbit hole. It's like, eventually you got to do something though. You got to. So I say that to say that I don't even know if we get all the players into a room, how much productivity would come out this room, or would be talking in like some feelings versus facts circle or something like that, because at some point somebody has to make a decision.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think my seller was ever going to make a decision about his late guy.
Right.
So, that's my thoughts with that. Oh, yeah. And then another thing with GoAd is,
and that's good order and discipline. That's what he's talking. GoAd stands for good order and discipline. That's the military term for things being where they need to be, people being on time, all that kind of expectations of how things run.
Yeah. I could never forget, I was in a mess, and what happens in a mess stays in a mess, right? I was in a mess. Yeah. And a chief, a friend of mine, came into the mess and she was like stressed out. She was like, I have to correct a seller about a uniform infraction. She was like, and I'm so tired. I'm so stressed out about it because I've done it already like 4 or 5 times. I'm like, and she's like, this seller has a division, goes to quarters, this. And she was like, it's to the point now where I think this seller is going to think that I'm targeting them, and I'm not. I'm just doing my job. If anybody was doing this, I would make this correction. So again, that was a bit of a struggle when it came to leadership, because now you feeling like you don't even want to correct somebody because nobody else is.
Yeah. So I'll anchor on that point a bit, because I do believe that, right? So going back to the Navy I grew up under, right? So it was for its own reasons, the far opposite end, right? So there was like almost abuse of authority in many cases, or right, chiefs had carte blanche to just kind of do what they needed to do, right? So that's the whole what's said in the mess stays in the mess, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes with that kind of lore of the chief, right? But they did have a lot of, like, they had these liberty cards, right? Like, oops, I lost that. You know what I mean? Where'd I put your liberty card, right?
Right.
Now you got to go to the admin chief. Well, I've talked to the admin chief and made sure that they can't get that printed for you for 2 or 3 days. So basically you were restricted, right, informally for 2 or 3 days, right? So that kind of nonsense was going on.
Right.
You hear stories about fan room, bulkhead counseling. And again, different generation, right? That was not an all volunteer Navy. That was a draft Navy. There were people that were brought in that did not want to be in the military.
Right.
So got it. They may have had to resort to that, right? But since then, things have changed. And leadership approaches have changed. But at the end of the day, there's still some things that need to get done, right? So this being on the work at time and contributing to the team, right? All that kind of stuff has to still happen. But now, over the ages, you know, even with parenting, right? So this gets into the generational thing. The way I was parented, maybe you too, right? Like, hey, I'd get spanked, I'd get whipped with a belt, right? That became like off limits. Like,
Right.
you cannot, that's abuse, you know, and there's you know, like, so then parents start backing off from that kind of like, and I'll say from that experience, there was nothing that happened that scarred me emotionally, right? Like,
Right.
all it took was once, and like my behavior was adjusted.
Right.
So I thought it was effective. But that kind of went away, you know, in general, as a socially accepted way to discipline, right? Same thing in the military, right? So the disciplinary approaches have changed, but then it gets to like, it goes the other way now, like as an organizational leader, like if I lean in, do I get blowback? Right. So maybe I don't lean in, right? That's the challenge I think that you see now. Are you seeing that? That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, some chiefs are afraid to not only chiefs, just leaders, period, first classes as well, works in the soups. But a lot of people are afraid because they think that something gonna get held against them and stuff like that. My thought there is, as long as you got the right intentions, I don't think nobody gonna hold anything against you. You just gotta speak when you're supposed to, and that's for juniors and leaders. Speak up.
Yeah. And Tisha would know, like,
right.
you got to know your legal red lines, right? Like, so you got to know hazing and like, but if you're like firm and fair and you're using the proper counseling techniques, you can get your point across, right?
Right. And I think where a lot of leaders, where there is that apprehension on doing that is that the process, because now people will launch a complaint just like that.
Yeah.
Whether it's valid or not, whether they have bases for it or not, they're going to launch that complaint. And then you have to wait through that process. That means maybe promotions are held up. Maybe you have, you know, this negative perception on you until, you know, that case is resolved. Even if it's just, it doesn't even result in something that's like NJP or anything, but someone just throwing that allegation out there, again, you know, bad news travels faster. And so when that person is vindicated, that news doesn't travel as fast. And so a lot of leaders are just kind of hesitant because they just don't want to go through the drama. And they don't want the negative, like if you've worked so hard over, you know, 18 years, and you're trying to make it to 20, or you're at 23 years and you're trying to, you know, put in your command master chief package or whatever it is that you're going for. Sometimes they just don't want to risk it. And especially nowadays where it's easy to hurt someone's feelings, not even intentionally. You can say, you can just give your opinion of something that's not even something that's controversial, but the other person, because we come from different walks of life, and some may be more sensitive towards things or how you speak to someone. You're being direct with someone could be offensive to one, or maybe they just have a vendetta because you didn't let them get off early one day or for whatever reason. Or they saw you doing something that you should not have done, or they perceive that. And now you're trying to discipline them. And they're like, oh, now you want to try to discipline me when I saw you, Chief, on Liberty.
That's that transparency we talked about when I was on your episode, right? So transparency is a great thing, but it's a double-edged sword.
Oh, yeah.
So your behavior as a leader is much more transparent too.
Yes.
And again, so I am like, I lean towards that, you know, I don't lean to, so I'm collaborative, and I always felt I was a democratic leader. Like, let's bring the team in. But there's a time when I need to talk very direct and firm, right? And like,
Right.
some people would say, "Oh, you're being a dick," right? For lack
Right.
of a better term. I'm like, no, I'm just being straight up. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? That's how you're taking it, but there's no malice in my intent. This
Right.
is all work related. This is actually the outcome I want is for the best interest of you and everyone involved here. And I'm sorry if that approach rubs you wrong, but but you do get blowback,
Mhm.
right? And I've written about this too. This is where it's important for the commanding officers, particularly, and the CMC and other senior leaders in the mess and the wardroom, to be able to understand that. Okay, being able to know, like, all right, this wasn't like bad behavior on the behalf of the chief's trying to lean in here, do the right thing,
Right.
right, and give the chief that middle manager top cover where they need it.
Right.
At the same time, I got it. You can't tolerate, because there is bad behavior that happens too. We've seen it,
Mhm.
right? Chiefs, they're
Mhm.
all over the line, right? Crossing
Yeah.
red lines and stuff. So, and I think that chief's mess self-correcting function should work too, because we see our peers,
Right.
and if someone just took them aside and like, hey, I get what you're trying to do, but the way you're talking to people is like out of the box. I'm just telling you, you got to rein it in, or someone's going to call you out to a position
Right.
where you're going to have to defend yourself, right, through a formal process.
Mhm.
Yes.
All right, so that segues into the chief's mess. That's the next thing I want to talk about. So particularly, and we've talked about a little bit of this so far. So most chiefs are millennials, if not all, right? Except for, like I said, the senior CMC. So here's some of the attributes of millennials and what they value. And right, this should resonate with you guys. So motivated by wanting to make a positive impact on the organization and the world at large. They value empathy and mindfulness. They like to be free thinkers. They tend to be big picture thinkers, tech savvy, and then eager to solve problems with a can-do attitude. So hey, I want that cheese mess all day. So on the other side, there's, as you know, right, there's some cheese mess mantras, results, not excuses, what says in the mess or said in the mess stays in the mess. There's some things out there and old values and beliefs about the cheese mess back in the day that we keep wanting to bring forward. Some that is good, but some of it I think is like, you got to throw it over the side. Like that doesn't play anymore. So, Damo, like you're going to be a command senior chief. You're going to have to influence the cheese mess. What's your take on where the cheese mess is regarding kind of their ability to manage and bridge the Gen X leaders like me with Gen Z?
Okay. Hey, I hope I'm not sounding too bitter here. I'm trying to be objective about things.
No, you're straight. This is
yeah, I'm
straight
trying
up.
to be
I
objective.
don't think anything you've said is bitter yet.
Okay. I have a hard time with the mess, Paul. I have a really hard time with the mess for two reasons. Just as who I am right now as a senior chief, and the way that I see the mess right now is a place that I go to, right? Outside of the fact that we got an organization and a fraternity. I'm not talking about that right now. It's a place that I go to and I see a bunch of people that I consider as friends and like good and decent people. And we do like friendly things outside of professional things and stuff like that. I remember having a talk with a seller and I'm like, hey, do you think like chiefs go in a mess and just talk about y'all? And the seller was like, yes, I do. I was like, no, we really don't. Like they just they make jokes and they shoot the shit. It's never it's not that many talks about you guys in a negative light. If it is, it's about the progression of sellers and stuff like that. All right, so I see a bunch of seller chiefs. I deal with a bunch of chiefs and I usually have good moments with chiefs. And then you get out on the deck plates and like the same chief that you have all of these great moments with is like hated by like their sellers or something. And I'm like, how is this really good person that's like super relatable and cool and seem like they understand like human activity? Like are they disconnected when they get out here with their people? Like what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And like, so I started to kind of look at the mess and it's not every chief, right? And none of the situation we talk about is in totality.
Yeah.
I think like, especially when you're talking about millennials, right? And a couple situations that's recently happened to me got me thinking this, right? And it got me thinking that some people believe that being a chief is the pinnacle of their career. Like they worked their way to this status, right? Whatever happens after that, but that's after you hit the pinnacle. And I think that they stopped trying. And I think they stop trying to, like, they get blinders on, right? Life gets a little easier. They get out of the rat race. And when you do all that, you get away from the deck plates a little bit mentally, right? So you think that you can't have this conversation with your seller. You can't let your seller know, about you. So I think you detach a little bit. I don't think we can afford to do that, right? So you talked on our podcast about discernment as a chief, right? You talked about your chief having discernment when you made a mistake in a space, and then you talked about having discernment when you became a chief. And I believe that as chiefs, we got to practice discernment. Like, we got to get back to that as well. Everything isn't in the books, right? And I think some sellers, right, and I hope I'm making sense here. I think some sellers may think that our power that chiefs have, right, air quotes, right, for the listeners. I think some sellers think that power only works down, like it don't work up, like we don't fight for them. We don't do anything for them. Everything is just at them and to them. So I have a hard time with the mess there because I see a bunch of friends, but like I said, but when I talk to the junior sellers, I was a semio. So when I was getting a pulse, out on the deck plates, it's like, damn, like, are you go online and you look at Facebook and you look at the comments and you look at all these groups, it's like, damn, like, are we like really, really failing, and that at that point. And I think some of it got to do with us being vulnerable. And I don't mean going out and I do things like this, like, I had a miscarriage, my grandma passed away and stuff like that. My division knew all of that, right? That's just me. I'm an open book. But like, being vulnerable is like just kind of like showing a little bit of you, who you are through your uniform, right? Not taking it off, nothing like that, but showing a little bit of, like, I'll give another example. We had a Seller 360 thing. And for Seller 360, I got the same idea every time, and people think it's horrible, Paul. They're like, hey, what you want to do, Damo? I'm like, hey, let's just get everybody together. Let's throw a topic on the board, and let's just talk about it.
I love it.
And they like, oh, that sounds so, like, they think it's so lazy. Like, they want to go pick,
they want to go topical guide objectives, and they want to, they got to have this back to baby structure. Like, no, someone's got to tell me what I got to talk about, or so I'm safe.
Yeah, right. And they like, nah, Damo. So, I told somebody, I'm like, hey, now when we get this group of people in here, I'm like, the only way this works is if we talk about ourselves and our vulnerabilities too. And she was like, I ain't doing that. I'm not about to let my sellers know what I'm going through. I'm like, all right, well, we never gonna succeed there. You know what I mean? Like that buy-in, that, like, I got in my notes here, like, sellers don't want superhumans anymore, right? They don't want like superheroes. They want connections. They want like even this generation period, right? Us, when we watch like superhero stories, let's go back to the boomers, right? And all of them, they had like Superman, right? Superman was invincible. Like for us, for my generation, that's boring to watch. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, only thing that could really get this guy is kryptonite, but that's not inspiring. That doesn't take me anywhere. Nothing. But you throw the Dark Knight on, Joker got the edge over Batman through the majority of the movie. Yeah. Somehow he got to come out of this. Like, a hero's journey in these days, the hero got to, it's the Rocky journey. He lost the first fight. You got to get, and I think that's what kind of drives the sellers. And I think that's what we need to do. I really hope I'm answering your question, Paul.
You are.
Okay.
And I'll jump in, and then I'm going to throw it over. I want Tisha to build on this. But this is where my point is, just to clarify, like, so these myths that are brought forward through the Chiefs mess, right, through generations, right? So if the Chief's late, they're detained elsewhere.
That's my favorite one.
Right, this invincible Chief model, right? And this results, not excuses. Well, okay, to a point, right? I can't be doing. I'll get you results, but I'm not going to do anything unethical, or I shouldn't be doing unethical, illegal, immoral stuff to get results. When you guys owe me resources to get things done in time to do things, or just that, like, hey, Chiefs are like, we're the standard bearer, and like, just these mind models, right? And I had a point, I've talked about this on the podcast, where as a young chief, I came in, I started to fill this role of the chief instead of being Paul Kingsbury. I'm like, I started to shift to like, no, I got to be this kind of disciplinary, no nonsense, yell at people, right? To your point, it was a facade I took outside the Chiefs mess. And I immediately saw like it wasn't connecting, and it made me feel like I don't even like this, right? So, and I got great advice from a fellow chief who said, no, you be Paul Kingsbury. That's what got you here, right? I went back to being Paul Kingsbury, and we got back to normal and got centered. But Tisha, does that make sense? What do you have to offer on what you saw in your time?
I'll tell you this, Paul. When I first came into the Chiefs mess, it was a eye opener because I had the superhero complex when it came to Chiefs, because luckily for a majority of my career, I was surrounded by some pretty amazing leaders who were open. I felt like they could relate to us, and they didn't completely open up to us, but we felt like we knew enough about them. They gained our trust. And we knew that they had our best interest at heart. I can't think of hardly any leader that I had that I did not have the best outlook on. There was always a chief there that was kind of protecting me from that person who were up to no good, the evildoers.
Right.
And so that was my perception. So I thought all chiefs were like great and could do no wrong. And they were like, had angels on their backs. And then when I came into the mess and I saw what happens behind closed doors, and I saw what I felt like was like unfair, like holding sailors, like you have your special picks and you kind of want to like, like let's celebrate these, but I have this perception of this sailor, so let's just throw them by the wayside. I've given up on this sailor, so I'm not going to focus anything on them. I'm not going to give them anything. Or a sailor makes a mistake, and then that mistake is attached to that sailor for the remainder of their tour. And the only way they can overcome that is to transfer. And during that time that they're there, their life is a living hell. And so coming into the mess, and this is what I saw, I remember at one point I called one of my mentors and I said, this isn't what I thought it was. I didn't even trust the mess that I was in, to be quite honest, because it just looked so different to me. And it wasn't until I moved on to a different mess, and then I really saw how the Chiefs mess operate, and it operated more like Damo's experience, where I had a camaraderie of people who had good intentions, at least amongst each other. And it seemed like that, flowed out into the other sailors too. And I also saw these, super chiefs during the season, and while you're out there during the season being super chiefs to these selectees, your sailors cannot stand you.
Right.
You are your impact in the command is very minimal. Your sailors are coming to me because you're out there playing when you haven't even like made sure your work center is good yet. And so I think that we have a lot of I completely agree with Damo that they feel like they've kind of made it and that's their pinnacle. And so now that they can relax. Now, I got my khakis. It'll take an act of Congress to, remove me from being chief. It's hard to fire me, and so, and it's that Bathsheba, is it called Bathsheba?
Yeah.
Syndrome?
Bathsheba
Yeah, the
syndrome.
Bathsheba syndrome, that you see it. You see it very, very heavy. I mean, very heavy. Some of these cases that I read, it's almost unbelievable that these leaders are still, in our Navy, but they are. I personally love the chief is never late or detained elsewhere.
Yeah.
I try to take that into my civilian career.
Yeah.
It doesn't work there. It doesn't work.
No.
But I think that we have this culture where it's, all right, I'm here, I've made it. Now I'm not going to kind of, I call it give back, because like your leaders got you to where you are. Now you're there to do the same thing, and they just really don't want to do it, because whether they do it or not, they're going to get the paycheck. And then when they're, especially on their way out the door, when they know that they're going to retire, it gets even worse. And they just their sailors are kind of falling by the wayside. And so it takes another chief to try to, pick up that slack for a whole completely different work center.
Yeah. Damage control too, right? And Damo, this is going to be your legacy. So I'm convinced, like, there needs to be a fundamental shift, right? I think too much has been brought forward with the Chiefs mess, right? And I can say I enjoyed some of these perks, obviously, but I was thinking about it, like, as far I question, like, should a Chiefs mess door say knock then enter, right? And set this tone of like
who goes there?
I don't want to be, right? Like, or do you want, like, with a generation of leaders, your generation and the one below, right? So that's, to me, very boomer centric, like, positional place. Don't come here. This is our place, our perks. That's not transparency,
right?
That's not kind of what. So I just see this natural, like, and I think it's going to start with your generation, where the Chiefs mess starts to go, what the hell are we doing?
Right.
I will tell you from the outside, looking in, and what I saw, my, this kind of, I think it's very inward focused Chiefs mess now, like, to focus on positional power, like Chiefs, Navy Chief, Navy Pride. Okay, got it. Why are the Chiefs the only ones running around doing that, right? I don't see, like, LDO pride. I don't see, like, I want rating pride. I want USS whatever pride, right? I want team pride. I think that has to be a conversation that starts happening within the Chiefs mess.
Yeah. Hey, so we wash our mugs, Paul. I think I wash mine and Tisha wash hers. So I think that's the start.
Yes.
That's the inception.
I just saw a post about that, right? Like, some sailors were joking, like, they grabbed their Chiefs mug and washed it and just got complete blowback.
That was me.
Yeah. Like mine is clean, and it started. Like, so whenever people ask, like, what started the shift to the Chiefs mess 30 years from now, it was that first chief that decided to wash their mug, right?
Yeah. But heck, I started putting creamer in my coffee. God forbid, like, a Chief.
Exactly.
Back in the day again.
Right.
I remember, I'm telling you, right, a little sea story. I was a second class petty officer. I was on the Ike. One day my chief was like, hey, come here. So he took me down to the supply office, right, with his fellow chief. And they're like, look, they had a little box of those little creamers. Those things were, like, not the norm back then. It was like dealing drugs. It's like, put this in your coffee. I'm like, oh man, that's really good, right? But you didn't want to tell people you're putting foo-foo in your coffee, right? Because again, that whole image of the chief was, like, tough and, like, a back to the sucking the tear in the eyeball thing.
That's funny, man.
And I got, like, and I'm not saying there's not a time and a place to be firm and directive, and, like, hey, there's going to be a time when a chief's leading a repair locker, and I mentioned this on your podcast. Like, no, like, I am, like, calling the shots, and, like, I don't have time, right? I'm not going to be transparent. We are in crisis and I need to deliver, but something's got to give. The culture's off. There's too much. I'm not super into Reddit, but I know the stuff I do read is disheartening. Right. And I know there's good chiefs doing it, right? I know there's chiefs out there doing it right, but the ones not doing it are killing the brand of the chief mess.
Hey, Paul, can I add something real quick to this? Though? There's a number of us, right? It's a number of us that just delegate, right? That delegate too much, right? And I listen to your podcast a lot, so I understand what your expectation is of the Chiefs mess. And I heard you talk about being technically sound a lot, like being the go-to for technical expertise, right? But a lot of, like, I'm not gonna say a lot of us. It's a number of us that are not technical experts, right? And also don't practice it, right? So a lot of you get a chief that might get, I'm going to just throw collateral duties in the mix, and I really don't want to. But, hey, you get a chief that might get, like, a collateral duty. Let's say, hey, you're going to be the DAPA, right? The next thing that chief is probably going to get is an assistant DAPA that's a first class, right? The assistant DAPA is going to do the DAPA job. Yeah. And the chief is going to be like, hey, I'm the chief. I'm the person at the end of the hallway in the black door. If you ever need anything, you come talk to me, right?
Yep.
And what that's done, in my opinion, and that don't just happen with collaterals, that happen with divisional things, that happen
Yeah.
with everything. Like, what does a chief do? And I remember I talked about it on our podcast when I first got to my ship I'm on now, and then my LPO was like, "Hey, my job is to work you out of a job." I'm like, "You're not fucking working me." Sorry
Right.
for the listeners, but you're not
Yeah.
working me out of a job. Like,
Yeah.
I came here with a job to do. I'm not gonna give you my pack and just you run with it. What am I gonna do? I have a job to do. My
Yeah.
job is to take care of you. I think we've going down that road of delegation just a little bit too far, where the
Yep.
next person in line is delegating. That first class is delegate. Then they giving it to a second class, and that second class, okay, we've delegated. You know what I'm saying? Let's now do some work, because Chiefs, we build up all this technical savviness and all these skills just to never perform them again. Even at training, even at like divisional trainings, right? They don't be too many times where the chief giving a training, the person that knows, you know, in my division, I haven't done a training yet, right? I blame y'all guys for y'all to listen. Put me on the training board. No, I'm just joking, but like there are things that I know that I could, you know, tell, but a lot of times Chief want to sit back, do the critique, tell somebody else. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think we've delegated a little bit too much, Paul.
Yeah. And I'll concur with that. So here's what I will tell you, and Tisha will agree. You don't delegate anything in the civilian world. There's no assistant of what I do that I can be like, hey, I'm going to sit back and like, and it really comes at like the training your relief thing, right? Like, okay, you mentor your reliefs, right? You don't just throw your responsibilities onto them. And in some cases, those things, you see this a lot with collaterals, like you mentioned. So like ESWAS coordinator, I'm even guilty of this. As command mass chief, I was like, all right, I'll give a senior chief the opportunity to do that. But there's some things I have to do because I have to hold people accountable for a standard, right? I can't just give that to a chief, right? Because number one, they're going to have to hold people senior to them accountable. And I'm not saying they can't, but that puts them in a position that is unfair for them to manage. You know what I mean? I have the authority, I can call the shots, and I have the responsibility. So some things can't be delegated. Or, hey, do this thing and then give it to me. I'm going to review it and then I'll sign it, right? Kind of thing. Not just like you're going to sign it. So I think this whole, to your point, if you're seeing that, that would be my advice is like, I'm not saying you don't expose people to those things, but the responsibility is still yours. And you can't delegate the responsibility. Remember, you can delegate the authority to do the action, but you own the outcome.
And I compare it to, and I hate to just cling on it, but I compare it to like a chef, right? An executive chef, right? Who started out with a food truck or something like that. And we love this chef food. This chef makes some really good food, right? And then they work their way up to a restaurant. They become an executive chef. They get sous chefs. They get a bunch of chefs on staffs, and then they never cook anymore. Like, so you never get to taste this amazing food that this subject matter expert makes because they got a whole bunch of other people to, you know, to do it. Every now and then I want to taste chef's food. You know, every now and then the people need to see chef's food. Every now and then chef need to show his sous chefs and his staff how to, you know, prep them. It's like when the CS, I talked to, I was on DGUS, I talked to DGUS about this. It's like when the CS Master Chief decided to make the hog on Christmas. It's like, damn, this was amazing.
Right.
You know what I mean? This was good.
Yeah.
What do we eat every day? You know, but you know, that's my point, Paul. I don't want to hang on too much.
No, so generationally, right? It's the balance, right? So it's the balance of like, you know, I got this generation, got it. It's can do, and you want to do it, but there's a point on responsibility and who needs to be doing what and why. And then sometimes you got to simmer in the pot, right? Like, I know you're hungry, but do this and get this down really well first. And then I'm going to bring you up, right? And then, there'll be an opportunity. Maybe I go on leave, and now I'm going to give the opportunity to kind of sit in the seat for a bit, and then we're going to huddle. But you don't just come back. You use that as a learning opportunity. So I think that's the balance of it. But I am with you on that. Like, don't over delegate just to give it up and pad, you know, selection board packages. That's kind of what back to my thing about selection board. That's another behavior, by the way. So, all right. One more. So actually, let's wrap with this. So Damo, you're going to give advice, right? You're going to advise up the chain of command. You're going to lead up. You're going to lead across, right? You're going to mentor like you've been doing. You do it already, and I know Tisha did this. Within the chief's mess, you should be mentoring, and then you're going to lead down with sailors. So what's your advice to them on this kind of, like, when you go into a command thinking this generational thing, like what's going to be your advice on how to emphasize, like, what's the importance of lifelong learning in solving this kind of stuff? How do you encourage, I think, cross-generational mentorship? Like, how do you make it okay for a junior sailor to mentor a chief where a chief doesn't know what they're doing? You know what I mean? Or a skill set, like with some kind of thing. How are you thinking about that? What would your advice be to senior leaders and to junior sailors on how they can help manage generational conflict, I guess I would say?
For the senior leaders, right, the sellers, I talked about it earlier, they not looking for superheroes. They looking for humans with vulnerabilities. That's how they establish a connection now, by seeing that we are people that struggle with the same things that they struggle with, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is the term servant leader isn't as bad as some people might think it is. A lot of sellers want to be served. You know, they want to know that, like, we got their lead shit process in time, right? I say that because that is the easiest way to win your sellers over, is to take care of them wherever they need to be taken care of, right? That don't mean you gotta bow down to like the ways of some generation or something like that. That just mean that, hey, this person put in leave, let's get this leave approved as fast as we can.
Yeah.
If we can't get it approved, let's kind of have the conversation as to why. I had a situation, one of my sellers had an emergency at home and was going through like 5 different things, and so they couldn't come to work that day. And he called me back later in the day after he took care of the stuff, and he was like, hey, senior, the one thing I want to let you know is the last thing I was worried about today was work. I knew that I was going to be taken care of. You know what I'm saying? And that just meant, you know, that meant the most to me. It wasn't like I had to go talk to my top snipe. I had to go talk to my Sims. No, let's do this. Let's figure this out. And then I did talk to my top snipe and let him know. But that's just how things went. So I say, like, be a service leader. And I also say that the problems never really change, right? It's just the way that people process the problem. So what I tell my sellers, right, my advice, right, and I'm happy to do somebody else's podcast where I could like just talk about leadership for a second.
Yes.
My advice for them is like, hey, let's make it make sense, right? So whether we agree or whether we disagree, let's make it make sense. So I tell them like this, hey, what I have going for me is experience, right? What you have going for you is right now, right? Whatever you got currently, you might understand things technically more than me, whatever, right? So when you present me a problem, I'm looking at it based off my experience, and you're looking at it based off however you see it currently. Let's get together, right? It might kind of hurt us a little bit as we figuring it out, but let's make this make sense, right? You got this going on at home. Based off of my upbringing, I don't really understand that. I wouldn't have done it like that. I wouldn't have, but let's figure it out. I'm going to give you my wisdom. You're going to give me your information, and then we're going to meet in the middle and we're going to make it make sense, right? And I normally leave all the conversations like, hey, this makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you? And that's kind of what I want. I just want to make sense. Like, I never want somebody to leave me like, hey, with senior, I'm just doing it because senior said it, or I don't understand what senior said, right? So that's kind of my thing is, hey, make it make sense, and we good to go from there.
Awesome. So I love that, right? So, all right, Tisha, I mean, you're retired now.
I'm retired now.
You're going to do this in your, like, this translates to the civilian world
It
too,
does.
right? I mean, it really
It
does.
actually
So
does.
what's your advice to your new boss or the people that work with you on this?
So I would say for seniors, you still owe something. The generation, they are more so looking at, okay, what do I owe the Navy? And then what does the Navy owe back to me? And is it worth it? And so it's our job to give these sailors what we owe them. Yeah, the Navy's going to give them a paycheck. They're going to get their benefits. But they actually want knowledge. They want to be experts in their field. They actually want to figure out how it's done so they can figure out a better way to do it, because they are a generation that works smarter, not harder. and
Yeah.
what they perceive is their hard work looks different than what our hard work looked like. They want to capitalize off of, okay, how can we get this done as quickly as possible with as little effort as possible.
Yeah.
And
But that's
where we
okay.
come in is including that efficiency part of it. Just because they want to get it done quickly and get it out of the way, we still owe them the technical expertise of it. We still owe them the why, so they understand what they're doing, and maybe it will empower them to, if they can present a better product or a better way to do things, then we have to be open to absorbing that and maybe tweaking it a little bit, and then now we have a whole new, different process that we're working in. So we owe these sailors something. We're not here just to, direct and point and shoot and tell them do this and do that. We owe them ourselves. Like, we have to continue to pour into them. I remember one part of my career, like a bad leadership moment. And it was like I was empty in my personal life. Things were not going good. And that flowed into work. And had this like almost like a bad leadership moment where I said something out of anger and exhaustion and just like, I don't want to deal with these sailors. I have my own problems going on. But that did not matter. It didn't matter what I had going on at home. I still owed them something. I still owed them the best part of me, even if it was nothing left. That means I needed to go and either fix my issue, fix myself emotionally, so that I can come back every morning and bring something to that sailor. So I think we owe something. As far as the junior sailors, presenting solutions. I think a lot of times we get the sailors that vent. They just kind of will, articulate their frustration, but they don't really want to kind of present or talk about, okay, what does the solution look like? Especially now with like social media, everybody can kind of get on, what do they call them? Finger gangsters or something like that. thumb gangsters, where they can get on and they, they just blast out stuff and, they say whatever, with no thought on, well, what does the big picture look like, or what is the senior leadership doing, or why is this policy like that? Maybe it's to protect you, maybe it's for safety concerns, so trying to get a better understanding of what's going on, and then, hey, how about presenting a solution? Don't come to me with a problem. Don't come to me with just a problem if that's all you want to do. If you want to vent, like let's come up. If you're not ready to come up with a solution, then you're kind of wasting your time. I think a lot of times, especially with when you see things go wrong and then it's fixed, and then they always want to kind of harp on, well, this and that. We're like, but we fixed that. Now we're moving on, and so given your senior leaders, like, yeah, we're not going to get it right all the time. But when we come up with a solution, let's just move forward.
Awesome. Yeah, I wrote down. So I think one thing this was touched on, like the human condition and human experience spans generations. So I don't care what generation, there's certain things about the human experience and leadership that are blind to generation, right? So maybe the way you communicate is different, but the fundamental way we communicate and the need to be acknowledged, right? That's always been something that's happened across generations. And then humility, right? As a leader on both sides, right? The humility of the leader to learn and kind of understand, the humility of, like, to your point, Tisha, yeah, you're frustrated or whatever, but having humility to accept, like, okay, they at least did something, right? So I'm trying, don't just blast me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, got it. Right. But I think it comes down to just taking time to learn and understand. And hopefully this episode's got people thinking something about that, right? I don't think we're bad people. We don't want to be, everyone's coming in the organization each day, I think, wanting to do the best they can do without malicious intent. There are outliers that are there doing bad stuff, but that stuff comes out. And if people help reveal them. We can either mitigate or get rid of them.
Right.
But I think most of your leaders are coming in, the junior sailors coming in, the young sailor, the middle manager, they're all coming in to try to do their best.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we can understand and learn about each other and differences. I think there is something to the older generations being open to mentorship, right, to younger. Hell, I wouldn't have been able to podcast if I wasn't open to that, right? I had to reach out to like D-Guts and I mean, relatively younger, but like people that knew the savvy in the space. You know, I couldn't go in there like, oh, I'm just going to, I didn't ever got it done. Right. So there's so much to learn. There is a lot to learn from the younger generation.
Absolutely.
And if it's not something technical, it's something about their perspective. I think military culture still needs to adjust. I think empathy and flexibility need to be a part of military culture, not just in wartime operations, but in day to day. I think there's more empowerment. I think the rank structure inhibits our ability to empower our workforce. And I don't know if that's something generations can mitigate, but we have, right, this isn't the Napoleonic era, you know what I mean? Like some of these military structures,
right?
But the overvaluing of rank devices and all that stuff, it's like, okay, let's there's a person behind that uniform. So let's get into the mind and the person makes the uniform doesn't make the person. Absolutely. Kind of thing. So, and then ultimately respect, open communication, and knowledge sharing, I think. And this is a piece of, I think, what we're trying to do. So, guys, I appreciate, you guys taking time. Damo, hopefully you're probably taking notes like, but this is always, I think this is a big thing we got to talk through and continue to work. So, good luck with you on your command senior chief tour, wherever that ends up being. I know you're working through orders, right?
Yeah. It's gonna be a while. We figured out. I'm supposed to talk some stuff tomorrow, but I think I'm gonna spend a little bit more time on my ship before I go, so it'll be in a few months.
Good. Yeah. And I'm here. Like, hey, you know where I'm at. If you ever need advice or whatever, reach out to me. I can at least tell you my Gen X stories.
Yeah, I will.
And then Tisha, good luck to you. Thank you. Thanks for your service and good luck in your new position. It's going to be great. Believe me, there'll be some differences, but it's going to be great. I'm excited for you.
You know, the biggest difference that I'm seeing right now, I'm having the Navy has institutionalized me in a lot of ways. And looking on the other side, and I'm just like, where's the SOP?
Right.
Where's the SOP? And I'm sitting there trying to create an SOP right now. And it's just like, why? I don't even think they even do that. But there are a lot of things where it's like, things that like maybe I took for granted in the Navy as far as like the structure and how we do things. I appreciate it so much more now on the other side where I don't see a lot of that's over there. And so even with like leadership principles, I look at some of I don't want to call anybody out, but I look at the way that they lead and it's just we lead in a very different way. And I feel like if, whatever happens in my personal life, they care, but they're not, it's different, we're very like deck plate leadership and know people and, and it's just I don't feel the camaraderie really there where it's like, oh, let's go to dinner after. Everybody just kind of goes to their respective places and we just kind of come back. And so that's a little bit different to me. So I really appreciate the military culture. It's like no other. We have these, these issues that we're talking about and that we're working through to be better. And I just think that just makes the Navy, the military, such a special place. And I just value like the conversations, having conversations like this, where it's like, we are really trying to get it right from the top down.
Yep. And I'm telling you, you bring that stuff in there, don't be afraid. They will value it because I'm telling you, they see it in what I bring into our organization. And I get a lot of positive feedback. So your community, all that's going to change and then we'll embrace it. So like be the lead, right? Get them out there. They'll follow, right? I've built those like, hey, let's go out and have lunch. Let's go out and have dinner. You know what I mean? And they love those opportunities. So, and I need to do an episode on that too. I do need to talk about transition and kind of finding your path and giving back and those kind of things. So, but all right, we'll wrap this one. Guys, thanks again. Good luck to you guys. Thanks everyone again for watching this episode of the Cutlass Podcast, or listening to it, frankly. I think we're up to episode 58 now. I'll get this one out and produced in a couple weeks or so. So maybe 25-ish videos. So I'm looking for that 200th YouTube subscriber. So help me get there. And then the next goal will be 400. But hey, if you like what you're seeing and hearing, subscribe, share, all that stuff matters. It really does. It's not, Damo and I were talking earlier, this isn't like money making stuff, but we want to get this information out to people, not just within the Navy, but there's civilian people that can definitely enjoy these conversations and gain value out of them. So take some time, subscribe, and take what you learn to go out and be a sturdy, versatile, incredible leader who makes a positive difference in your workplace and your personal life. We'll see you on the next episode.